Today we will go over how to create a file to use with the universal lasers. The software you'll use for the universal laser system is CorelDraw. Now normally in the past we have taught you to open up a new file and you can size the drawing area to your liking. However, with the universal laser systems we are going to use a template. The template is located in Schoology, either under the laser unit and then laser engraved templates, red or blue, or under your course reference material, again same folder. The red laser is in the Fab Lab. Okay, the blue laser is in the Robotics Lab. So depending on which laser you're going to be using, use that appropriate template. The templates are set up with the correct color management system. So in this case, the color management is a RGB, which stands for red, blue, green, red, blue, green. Whereas when we use the Roland vinyl cutter and UV printer, that's a CMYK color management. And so this is set up correctly to use with the laser. It is also set up with the size of the laser bed. So let's go ahead and open up the red laser template in CorelDraw. Now, in the template, when it opens, you see a large rectangle. And if you look at the dimensions of this drawing area, it is 40 inches by 24 inches. That is the size of the laser bed. When you're using the laser, you do not want to change the size of the bed. Okay, this is set up to where anything that's in this area will be laser engravable or laser cuttable once we go to the laser. Also in your object manager, you can see that Mr. Hazelhurst has set up different layers for you. We have cut layer, engrave front, raster front, engrave back, raster back. This is if you had something that you wanted to engrave, but then you also wanted to engrave on the back of that object. You could put the objects or the text on those layers and hide them so that you didn't engrave them all at one time. We'll get more into this as we move through. So now that we have our template open, we know the size is going to be 40 by 24 for the red laser in the Fab Lab. The blue laser in the Robotics Lab is 32 by 18. So when you open up that template, these numbers will be different. So anything that we place on this drawing area will be engraved. So if I were to type text, I could, let's make that bigger so you can see it. So that's really big text. But that would engrave, and it's black. We could also change the color to blue. Any color that it's filled with, it will engrave. The color will determine the intensity of the laser while it engraves. Black will give you a darker engrave, whereas your other lighter colors such as green and yellow, magenta, will give you a lighter engrave depth. Anything that is going to be engraved that is filled in with color will be what's called raster engrave. Raster engrave, if you've watched the videos, is when the laser will go side to side, starting either at the top or the bottom of the area and start engraving. Now, what if we did not want to have these as fill? Okay, maybe we wanted these letters to be outlined. In that case, we would need to add an outline to this. I'm going to go ahead and change this color to green just so we can see this. But if I wanted to add an outline to this, I could then right-click on blue. And then get rid of my fill. So to get rid of any fill or outline, you click or right click on this red slash at the very top of the palette, and it will get rid of your fill. Now I chose blue because blue is a special type of engraving. It is vector engraving. I'm going to go ahead and click on Convert to Curves here because you do need to have a hairline. Okay? When you vector engrave, the laser will follow the outline instead of going back and forth. So in this case, it would be a lot faster to just engrave along the edges of our text. And that is blue and hairline. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in here so you can see this. This would be vector engrave. And again, if we were to fill this, get rid of the outline, this would be called raster engrave. And then we have one other type of process within Corel and the lasers, and that is if we were to do, let's say we wanted to cut, and we wanted to cut the letters of CCIC out. To cut using the laser, it is the same as vector engrave, except that we change the color to red. And hairline. Hairline is very important. If it is 0.05 thickness, it will not cut or raster or vector engrave. So your outlines need to be hairline in order to either vector engrave or vector cut. Now, this is simple text that we've been using with. What if you want to bring in a graphic? And so I'm going to bring in a graphic like we have in the past here. So this is the CCIC logo. So as it stands right now, this would engrave based on the colors, and you would be able to see the difference between the black I and the gray outline and the red or C's. And so the darker the color usually means that it will engrave darker. Now sometimes though, when you bring in an object, it is very pixelated, and where this is a very nice graphic, if it is pixelated, the chances are that yes, it will engrave, depending on how big the graphic is going to be engraved. You might see the pixels, and it may not be that clear. So we may need to edit that graphic. If that is the case, let's go ahead and I'll bring in a graphic, let's say CCIC logo. Let's go ahead and bring in this logo, because I do believe it is not as clear as the other. So I'm going to paste this in here, and if we zoom in, see it, we can see that it's very kind of pixelated. So I can clean this up a little bit by right clicking, going to outline trace, and then line art. So notice when it's calculating this, it does get rid of the gray. I can go ahead and click specify here, and it will add in that gray again. Now, as we look at this, you can see that that image wasn't very good. The text is pretty choppy. You can see where the pixelation is. There's a lot of different colored with the shadows and the pixels. So this graphic is not the greatest. Remember, it's also going to leave the original. So you need to make sure in your objects that you pay attention to what is there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the bitmap. And then let's talk about where we can group these. So this would be under raster. Could be raster front. We're not going to use the back for these. So I'm going to choose these. That is going to be engrave front. So I'm going to move that to engrave front. I'm going to use this for raster. This will be raster front. This will be, oops, this will be cut. So I'd put this into the cut. Oh, it already is. This would be raster as well. And I will move this to raster. So now we have our cut, which is red and hairline. We have our engrave front, that is vector engrave. Then we have our raster. Remember, that's when it goes side to side. And depending how big the object is, it could take a while to raster. So what I can do there is I can actually, if I'm looking at this, I could go through and hide these. So if I wanted to hide that layer and just cut or raster engrave, I could hide that layer. I can always turn it back on. Right here, I can turn that back on. So each of these layers can be turned off and on based on what you want to see.